Hi, this is Anne-Marie from Charmed Life Therapy again. Another couple of heavy days, honestly. It's non-stoppers this, isn't it? And it's kind of been disheartening again, it has to be said. So I'm going to go through some stuff, through some legal docs. I've asked ChatGPT to filter some of it for me, because sometimes when these documents come through, my brain just goes, whoa, when it hears the legal language, and it refuses to take anything in. I'm supposed to be a logically based person. I should love this stuff. But I think there's a real disconnect in me between the work I do, which is all subconscious mind based, and the logic stuff that I'm supposedly logically dominant, which I know I am, because I like order and structure and routine and mindless, meaningless tasks if it involves numbers and spreadsheets and the rest of it. But there's something about legal language in this case that really gets to me, and I don't know if it's because of the emotions involved and that you're emotionally invested, and your subconscious mind just goes, I don't want to read any of this legal stuff, it's not getting me anywhere, it's not helpful. But I just had a couple of thoughts, just in following on from my last video, where we were kind of talking a little bit about the marketing and how Blake couldn't have hoped to have got nominations when she chose to market it not as a DV movie, when she chose to market It Ends With Us as not as a DV movie, being specifically saying that. And what occurred to me was, because in their arguments, they tried to say this is the marketing plan that Sony came up with. We were only doing what Sony said. And I'm hoping that Wayfarer has some evidence to disprove this somehow, because we know how much sway Blake had with Sony, because she was running to them with her supposed HR complaint. She was trying to bypass Wayfarer. She got that producer brought on board of her choosing to interfere with things and to make it look like it was an unsafe set. Although I do notice Aldridge recently posted one of the It Ends With Us interviews where Blake's literally saying what a safe set it was, and how you could just be collaborative, and it was a safe environment to do what you weren't expected to just do this and this, and how lucky she was and all the rest of it. But it just occurred to me, was it actually Blake that pushed Sony? I mean, when you look at that doc that's supposedly the marketing brief, there's like no headings on it, it doesn't look official in any way. It doesn't look like a standard business letter will look. It's just literally like just a very plain Word document looking thing. But it occurred to me, was it actually Blake that pushed Sony? Was that one of the pressures? This is just my own thoughts bubbling away. Was it her that pushed Sony to market it as a fluff movie? Because if she'd have marketed it as a DV movie, logically then, she couldn't have promoted Blake Brown and Betty Buzz and the rest of it. So literally, was it her that actually went to Sony and said, I think it should be promoted like this, without letting on that she was actually going to stick her brands all over it? It did occur to me yesterday when I was like mulling over things as I do, that might have been a factor. And yeah, the Perez of it all. So that's still ongoing, isn't it? And he is going to have to rein himself in now, which I think possibly the point in him getting all those letters on the docket and all of the insults and all the rest of it was, I think he knew he had a short window to do that. He's not a dumb person. He's very smart. And he knows that he wasn't going to get away with that for long. So he got as much as he could on that docket before he got a rap on the knuckles, basically. But it has opened a window. Oh, there was already sorry, the light comes and goes here because I'm sat in natural light. But it has opened a window now for Blake to say he has to respond in this court, New York, because this is where he filed that initial motion to protect. So that ties him to New York. His argument is you have to deal with me in Las Vegas. And she's saying this opens a window for him to be dealt with in New York. And the judge has sided with that, in effect. He's got so long to respond to that. I think he's got about a week to respond to that now. So I'm really struggling lately. I tried to be really on the fence with this judge and keep an open mind, but I think it's getting increasingly hard to. And without a crystal ball was saying yesterday, is some of this struggle that Wayfarer just seems to keep getting trampled on by the narcissist, is part of it the problem that Justin's perspective may be that he still doesn't want to harm, in effect. He doesn't want to play dirty, he doesn't want to do these tactics. She mooted that is the faith aspect still being an issue, in that he doesn't really want to get down to the nitty-gritty and do what needs to be done. Or my feeling is, my hope is still that there's a very smart long game being played here, because I think Wayfarer have known early on that they may be fighting an uphill battle with this judge. I certainly hope they've got a narcissism expert on board, that they're not just all crisis PR strategy and things like that, that they've actually made a decision to hire somebody who's an expert in how to deal with the narcissist. They want that, is it Dr. Romani that's on YouTube? They need her on the case, don't they, to advise them. Because you do feel like you're tangled in a rat's nest when you're dealing with narcissists. But I just wonder, when they've done some of these more inflammatory things, like way back when the Taylor Swift thing was still going on and Brian put that affidavit on the docket, literally saying, I've spoken to somebody in this camp and this is what was said, that extortion and blah, blah, blah. When they've done that, and the other day, like putting the entire deposition on the docket, are they doing that in a way to provoke a reaction from the judge? And are they along the way slowly keeping a timeline of where this judge seems to appear biased? Are they sort of collating a case steadily in the background that's saying, we had valid arguments here and look, this is what happened? My hope is that is going on, that is part of the strategy that is happening. Because I find it really hard that Judge Liman continues to say that Wayfarer are a problem on the docket, whereby Blake is absolutely swamping the docket. I mean, the docket now, it's very hard to keep track of because things are often out of order. So where things get filed in numerical, in numbers, sometimes those numbers, the dockets themselves, are out of order. So you go look at them in order, trying to keep track of it in your head, and you're fighting a losing battle. And it's because they are planting so much stuff on that docket that it's all over the place. Well, Perez didn't help that much the other day with all his letters either. So let's run through it a bit. And at the end of the video, if there's time, I might do a little bit of spiritual stuff that some of you might want to tune out. But I'm doing A Course in Miracles at the moment. And it's really weird that on occasional days, something pops up in A Course in Miracles that just feels really relevant to this case, and how kind of that the world is an illusion, that life is an illusion. It is like the Matrix, if you like. And what you want to see, you will see. So this business of Blake Lively badly wanting to see a smear campaign and changing the parameters of what that means all the time. It literally is. She's looking for the illusion. She's trying to match the outside world to the delusion that is going on in her head. She's trying to find a way to make that narrative fit, because she can't make sense of it in her own head. So the outside world has to be at fault. There has to be information lacking, and that's what we're continuing to see here. So let's run through the judge's bloody awful order that's so frustrating. So Louis J. Lyman. So this is what he said. On August 1st, 2025, counsel for the Wayfarer parties and line of Friedman, Tattleman and Cooley filed a letter with the court, docket number 538, ostensibly responding to arguments made by counsel for Blake Lively regarding line of Friedman's pending motion to quash a subpoena. That's document 533. The letter broadly asserts that there is no evidence the Wayfarer parties, Brian Friedman or his firm, have participated in a smear campaign against Lively. For support, the letter quotes one fragment of one sentence from Lively's deposition. In the deposition, Lively testifies that she believes that the Wayfarer parties have retaliated against her for reporting harassment by engaging in an ongoing smear campaign, but she, appropriately, refuses to reveal information disclosed to her in confidence by her counsel. And all that line in the motion was Blake admitting that the only smear campaign she was personally aware of was what she believed Brian Friedman to be doing and what had gone on in the lawsuit, basically, in his personal statements. So the letter also includes, as an attachment, the entire uncertified 292-page transcript of Lively's deposition. Lively now moves under Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 12F and the court's inherent power to strike the attachment on the grounds that there is no conceivable legal purpose to file the whole transcript. Lively argues that the Wayfarer parties have included the entire transcript solely for strategic media and public relations purposes, specifically given the court's individual practices regarding sealed materials. The Wayfarer party's decision has put Lively in the position of defending the continued sealing of the transcript. So that's kind of annoying, really, because it's like, if you're moaning about a 292-page document on the docket and that it might make Blake Lively do a little bit of work, what about the frigging omnibus brief that's like thousands of pages that she's just dumped on the docket that the judge has to deal with and Wayfarer has to deal with? I know, I'm fully aware that it's like I said the other day, they've dumped that deposition on there slightly with a nod and a wink. But and the thing is, what I said earlier, and why I'm wondering if this is part of a larger strategy, is that these are not dumb people, Kevin Fritz and Brian Friedman and Jason Sunshine and Summer Benson and some of the others. They are not stupid people. They know the implications of what dumping that deposition on the docket was. So that's why I'm thinking, is there something else going on? Because that's not a mistake they would easily make. You know what I mean? So it kind of is, I just kind of feel, is there something deeper going on? You know what I mean? So Lively contends the Wayfarer parties have done so in order to advance a false narrative that Ms. Lively is afraid of her deposition testimony becoming public, which is entirely untrue. I believe that's probably when they're quoting from Lively's own words there. So the court agrees that inclusion of the entire deposition transcript served no proper purpose and accordingly grants the motion to strike. So that means that he's continuing, Liman, to go against arguments that have been cited based on his own decisions. So the other day, Kevin Fritz's letter was time after time citing Liman's own previous rulings. And again, is it all in some spreadsheet that's happening on the side where the questioning the judge's logic and decision making? Courts have inherent power to manage their own affairs so as to achieve the orderly and expeditious disposition of cases. Oh, friggin' hell, they've got massive omnibus brief on there too that they should be managing, isn't there? Or striking or asking to be abbreviated or something. So this includes the power to strike materials outside the pleadings that are abusive or otherwise improper. And then there's case law cited, lots of case law cited. Various ones. So the Second Circuit has explained that a court's supervisory function over its docket is not only within a district court's power but also among its responsibilities. Omnibus brief. I keep saying it, omnibus brief. Courts must therefore protect the judicial process from being co-opted and ensure that their dockets are not used to gratify private spite or promote public scandal. And it's like, why does this only apply to the Wayfarer parties? Why is this not applying to the Lively parties? It's like the other day when it was Jones and was it Jen Abel at the time? No, it was the case Koslow people that we're going to talk about in a little minute. They were saying they went off and just forgot about there was subpoena in us for ages. Then they came after we'd done all the work and submitted it to Lively and wanted different stuff. And the judge said, well, yeah, but you could have invited them. And it's like, yeah, but they could have asked. And it's like, why is it always going the lively way? Why when he's coming up with these decisions, when people seem to have an equal argument, and equal could be true, either could be true, why is it always going the lively way? Why is it never going the defence's way? This is what I'm finding hard. And yet I don't understand all the legal ramifications or the language or whatever, but I think it's weird. You tell me what you think. I think it's looking more and more unfair to my mind. And obviously that there, I guess, as well, about the court's control over its own docket is a little dig about Perez as well, and a little rein into him, because the judge has basically threatened in other statements that if that kind of abusive stuff is sticking on the docket continues, then he could be liable to be held in contempt. So he's to watch himself now. So the Wayfarer party's attachment of the entire nearly 300-page deposition. So he's moaning about the length of the deposition. I can't wait for Fritz and Co.'s response to this omnibus brief, because it's part of that argument going to be, they've asked you to look at 2,000 pages. We put 300 pages on the docket. So after citing only 2 pages of it in the letter, so basically he's saying they could have only put 2 pages on the docket. So he's saying it served no proper litigation purpose and instead appears to have been intended to burden Lively and as a result the court. it's I don't know, and to invite public speculation and scandal. But all of that, to my mind, is the judge guessing. There's no proof of that. So that to me is the judge guessing it's for public speculation and scandal. So I find that problematic. Even if the cited deposition portions were relevant or provided support for the Wayfarer party's arguments, both of which are far from clear, the Wayfarer parties have not even attempted to argue that the entire deposition was relevant, nor could they. The conclusion is inescapable that the Wayfarer parties filed gratuitous amounts of irrelevant pages so that, if Lively moved for continued sealing of the irrelevant pages, the Wayfarer parties could then use Lively's response for their own public relations purposes. The court has not only the power but also the responsibility to step in. But again, it's just blanket believing that that is the truth, that that is their reason for doing it. So that to me is problematic. What else can you think other than that? It's like, why are you necessarily choosing to believe that that is the truth, that that was their intention? Why not ask them? Why not question further? Why not ask them to clarify? He never does that. It just goes the opposite way. So the Wayfarer parties offer several responses, non-persuasive. First, they observe that Rule 12F does not authorise this court to strike documents other than pleadings. Docket number 576, quoting some other cases. They do not dispute, however, that the court has the inherent authority to strike documents other than pleadings when filed for improper purposes. Indeed, improper purposes according to him, basically. His belief that they're doing it for public relations purposes. Indeed, the court has already done so in this very case. And there's more, see docket 220. So I guess that's when they struck Brian's affidavit from the docket. The court need not resolve whether Ryle 12F, so that must be related to the character Ryle, or so it applies to the exhibits at issue, because the court's inherent power to strike improper materials clearly empowers it to strike these materials. Before I go on, I'm just going to read the footnote. So the Wayfarer party's actions follow a pattern of using filings on the docket as an opportunity to litigate this case in the press rather than in court. The court has already stricken from the record prior filings made by the Wayfarer parties for the improper purpose of inviting a press uproar. The court has likewise disregarded as improper attachments to other filings. So that's basically quoting Lively's argument there. And I think for a lot of us, this is when you feel it right there in your solar plexus and all of this. It's like, this just feels so blatantly unfair. And that's when it feels rotten, because that's when you slide into victim mode as well, and you feel like you're a victim of life, which I try to keep you out of if I can help it. So next they contend that Lively has not asserted that the deposition transcript contains abusive, improper or libelous materials, but that is not the test. The test is whether the Wayfarer party's filing itself was abusive or improper. And given that how is it abusive? And given that there could have been no proper reasons for the Wayfarer parties to have filed an entire transcript when only a few lines were even arguably relevant, Lively has demonstrated that the Wayfarer parties have abused this court's docket. And I find that kind of incredible. They're so quiet on that docket unless they absolutely have to be. And there is reams and reams and reams. I looked at that omnibus brief the other day where it sits on the docket, and I thought, shall I screenshot this so I can bring it all up? But it would have been more than 3 screenshots. It's that long, this thing. Oh no. I'm a bit like, when it comes to this content making, I'm a bit like, oh no, I can't be bothered, I can't be asked. And if you want somebody that's really, really thorough, you might need to go elsewhere. Finally, the Wayfarer parties explain that it is routine for the court to consider deposition testimony in connection with discovery disputes. It is not routine, however, for parties to attach an entire confidential deposition transcript when citing only limited portions of that transcript involving only a few lines of text in order to put the other side and the court to the burden of justifying continued sealing. But that's why I wonder if that's not the idea of it. If it is just kind of every so often giving the judge a little poke to say, how are you going to deal with this? And how are you going to deal with this? And how are you going to deal with this? And are are they trying to prove that there's no real leeway given to them at every turn? Whereas, are they pointing out on the other side of things how much leeway and how much rope keeps being extended to the Lively parties? And that's what I'm hoping is going on in the background. It may not be. That might be just a lovely illusion in my head. But I'm wondering if they're already thinking like about an appeal or getting it overturned or getting it removed or whatever it is. So Lively's motion to strike the attachment at document number 538.1 is granted. So that's it. The transcript goes off the docket. As there is no cause to seal the limited portion of the transcript cited by the Wayfarer parties in the letter, so that's basically just the bit where Lively admitted that the only personal knowledge she has of a smear campaign, or the only evidence is in her head, is what she believes Brian Friedman has done with his statements and on the docket, basically. Lively is directed to publicly file only 201:14, blah, 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 of docket number 538.1. Furthermore, because the only portion of the letter that is currently redacted is the portion of the transcript that the court now orders unsealed, so that's available on the docket now, that same little snippet of information. The court will also unseal the letter. So that's it basically, with the clerk directed to close dockets 537 and 540 and unseal 538. So I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel that whole thing reads really unfair, that they're calling Wayfarer abusive and overburdening the court simply by putting the deposition transcript on there. And it would not have taken much of an argument for that to remain sealed. It would have been like just some boilerplate bit of legal jargon to cover that. They're putting so much effort into everything else they're doing. What burden would that possibly have been in comparison to just allow that to remain there permanently sealed? What problem would it have been? So I found all of that really, really harsh. I did. So then the other thing that's going on is these ladies, Breanna, Butler, Koslow and Catherine Case, are still being harassed, I feel, because now Lively who has all the information from them. They've still got to deal with Stephanie Jones and all the things that she wants, in addition to what they've already provided Lively, the different things. And now Blake Lively has come back at them to say there's stuff still outstanding. There's stuff here that clearly indicates that this wasn't about legal conversations and privilege matters. This is PR, and we're going to find every way we possibly can to try and spin this into it looking like PR. So there's a motion in support on the docket from Stephanie A. I don't know how you say it, Risa or Rosa. I am an attorney admitted to practice before this court, a partner in the law firm of Manat, Phelps and Phillips, Etienne, and counsel of record for Blake Lively in the above captioned action. I respectfully submit this declaration in support of Ms. Lively's letter motions to compel non-parties Catherine Case and Breanna Butler Koslow to produce documents withheld on privilege grounds. On July 16th, Ms. Case and Koslow transmitted their initial document productions, which contained 6,728 documents. First production. Upon initial review of the first production on July 17th, I discovered that the productions included a large number of communications on which the Wayfarer Dependents Council were copied. Out of an abundance of caution, I immediately ceased review of the documents. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt there. That same day, my co-counsel at Wilkie Farr and Gallagher LLP, Kristin Bender, emailed counsel for Ms. Case and Koslow, Mr. Wallace, Street Relations and the Wayfarer defendants to provide notice that Ms. Case and Koslow's document production contained communications that included the Wayfarer Defendants Council. Attached as Exhibits A and B are copies of Ms. Bender's July 17th emails to counsel, which I also received. On July 18th, counsel for Ms. Case and Koslow sent an email stating that they would claw back a substantial volume of the produced documents and represented that such documents had been inadvertently produced. In all, 68 documents from Ms. Case's production and 278 documents from Ms. Koslow's production were subject to the clawback. That same day, I attended a conferral with counsel for Ms. Case and Koslow, during which counsel shared that they had spoken with counsel for the Wayfarer defendants regarding the clawed-back documents. The next day, on July 19th, Ms. Case and Koslow transmitted a reproduction with slip sheets in place of the documents that they claimed had been inadvertently produced. Second production. Counsel referenced attorney work product and attorney-client privilege, but did not reference any common interest privilege assertion at that time. During a meet and confer between counsel for Ms. Lively and counsel for Ms. Case and Koslow later that afternoon, counsel for Ms. Case and Koslow stated that the production of privileged information was not due exclusively or primarily to technical errors. On July 21st, I emailed the Wayfarer Defendants Council inquiring whether the Wayfarer defendants intended to assert any claim of privilege over documents in Ms. Case or Koslow's productions, and if so, requested that counsel specify the nature of the privilege as to any such document, provide the basis for any such claim in the form of a privilege log, and provide availability to meet and confer regarding the same. So attached as Exhibit C is a copy of that email to the Wayfarer Defendants Council. On July 22, Wayfarer Defendants Council responded that they would be asserting the attorney-client privilege, work product doctrine, common interest privilege, and any other applicable privilege, without further detail regarding the basis for such assertions or which documents they applied to, and without providing a privilege log. Also on July 22, Case and Koslow produced privilege logs that identified 209 and 494 documents respectively from August 24 to March 25. And this is where I object, that they're continuing to litigate into the future basically. When Blake filed that suit in December 24, the case is whatever happened up to then, is my understanding. But this judge is allowing them this leeway of it somehow being an ongoing smear campaign, which who in their right minds would all still be colluding as to this ongoing smear campaign. It's like basically saying that all the negative press that Lively is still experiencing is all still being collaborated on by all of these Wayfarer parties and tag parties and Jed Wallace and Street Relations, all still into the future to this very day pretty much. So the privilege logs contained only 2 category entries each with no individual identification of any documents. Most of the withheld documents involve certain of the Wayfarer defendants, their counsel and third parties. A copy of Ms. Case's privilege log is attached here too as Exhibit D, and Koslow's privilege log attached as F's. Counsel for Ms. Lively conferred with counsel for Case and Koslow and counsel for Wayfarer on July 23 regarding the productions. On that conferral, we discussed Ms. Lively's position that the privilege logs that were produced were insufficient. Of course they were insufficient. Everything's insufficient for Blake because they did not provide enough information about the withheld documents, who was included in the communications reflected in the withheld documents, and which privilege applied to each document. In response, counsel for Ms. Case and Koslow maintained that their privilege logs were sufficient as categorical privilege logs under this court's decision, and there's some case law cited. Counsel for the Wayfarer defendants confirmed that they did not intend to serve any privilege log with respect to Case and Koslow's productions, and instead would simply adopt Ms. Case and Koslow's privilege logs. So just basically agreeing to how they'd logged it, basically, I guess, not supplying their own in tandem with it. Etienne, she's dying to bark. She's dying to bark at something through my window. Following that July 23rd conferral, I emailed the Wayfarer Defendants Council to specifically alert them that Ms. Case and Ms. Koslow's second production still contained communications copying certain counsel. A true and correct copy of my July 23rd, 2025 email is attached here too. The Wayfarer Defendants did not respond to this email. Also on July 23rd, my co-counsel at Wilkie Farr, Aaron Nathan, sent an email confirming the Wayfarer defendants' position that they would adopt the privilege logs provided by Ms. Case and Koslow and not provide a separate log. So you see, who's overburdening who in this legal case? You know, a true and correct copy of Mr. Nathan's July 23rd email is attached as Exhibit G. Ms. Koslow served an amended privilege log on July 28th, withdrawing her privilege claim as to a single communication on which a certain content creator had been copied. Now, I wonder which is the certain content creator. It'll be one of the ones we already know. But it's interesting, isn't it, that they're still almost... The insinuation here is that the entire untraceable smear campaign kind of just rested on one content creator. A true and correct copy of Ms. Koslow's July 28th amended privilege log is attached here too as Exhibit H. A true and correct copy of the second amended privilege log served by the Skyline Agency and Rosa Calantari on May 30th is attached here as Exhibit I. I declare blah blah blah. So Rosa Calantari is the digital marketing specialist that put together the lawsuit info.com, you know, the original website where Baldoni put all his proofs on and the texts and all of that. So yeah, I'm really feeling for these women, Case and Koslow, because they've become such a massive part of it, and these, as much as anybody, have been overburdened, I think. So I kind of uploaded the docs to ChatGPT because I just wanted to cut out a lot of the fluff and see if I could truly understand what was going on here, because it's so complex just to listen to it. So I'm just going to look here at what I can... And I tell ChatGPT as well, when it goes too Blake Lively, I go, you do realise, you know, that I'm Team Baldoni, and I'd rather talk about it from that perspective. So let's run through what ChatGPT has done, with bearing it in mind that it's not always right about everything, given that we know it gave Perez Hilton some hallucinatory case citations when he was... trying to create his protective motion or whatever it was. So basically what this is, why they're targeting Case and Koslow, is they're trying to prove that a lot of the things that they're calling privileged aren't legal. It's not part of legal strategy. And that just because a lawyer is copied in on it does not mean that it becomes privileged communications if it's not strictly about getting legal advice. It's just tagging them in to a discussion that's actually about PR. That's what Blake is trying to say. So Lively's teams are saying that a lot of these messages include Jed Wallace and this Rosa Kalantari and other Wayfarer people, not just lawyers. Let me see what else it is. Yeah, what else is it saying? So if non-lawyers are in the room and they're not essential for giving legal advice, attorney-client privilege doesn't apply, basically. Just looping a lawyer in does not mean that your PR text suddenly become legal advice. So Lively's lawyers are sort of stating that these discussions are tied to things like that, the creation of that website, which was set up to push Wayfarer's public narrative. And basically what they're saying through all of this is that they're saying that Lively's team are saying that Wayfarer kind of weren't admitting to doing all of this strategy stuff, and here clearly there's stuff going on as early as August 14th, which she calls like the height of the smear campaign. But surely that argument falls by the wayside, no pun intended, when Wayfarer didn't do anything in terms of, target her with a lawsuit. All of this was done, in my opinion, as a protective measure. It's that if we have to be ready to go. We have to have things in place. But they didn't do anything that can be proved until they got sued. And then they kind of had to do these things. But had they not been talking about things from August and doing this if she does this, we'll have to do that, they'd have been totally lost, wouldn't they? So it's again harking back to this, you didn't have the right to be prepared for what I might choose to do to you. That's what it reads like to me. So there's kind of coming up with precedent that says running a PR war is not protected legal work just because you copy a lawyer in on it. So they're saying it was about swaying public opinion rather than preparation for court, and that they think it's fair game for disclosure, that all of this should be revealed. But what does it say here? A big chunk of these withheld docs are from before December 21st, before Wallace had any formal common legal interest with Wayfarer. So in ChatGPT's mind, that says without that shared legal strategy in place, those early communications can't be privileged. So that is possibly a potential point. In their privilege logs, Koslow initially included blatantly non-legal communications like coordinating one single content creator's public statement. They only pulled that one item out after Lively's lawyers flagged it, raising questions about what else might be wrongly hidden. So basically, because one content creator's name is there, that's also kind of giving them leeway to say this is PR strategy. So I don't know what's happened whereby they've sent a ton of stuff over that they shouldn't have, but I think it's quite common for things to have to be clawed back that have been inadvertently sent. So this business to do with the logs, which is a bit complicated. So it's basically saying when they resubmitted it, the privilege logs kind of categorized it in groups, and it was vague and not very specific, making it hard to verify claims, is their argument. And that Wayfarer is also claiming multiple privileges but refuses to produce its own log as to why. It's just adopting Koslow and Case's logs. So when I ask it to do pro Baldoni framing, it goes for content. The pro Baldoni framing. This is Lively's team trying to pry into Baldoni and Wayfarer's comms by painting them as sneaky PR operations disguised as legal work. So they're stretching legal privilege rules to fish for internal PR strategy. The mischaracterising PR coordination as misconduct. The inadvertent production and the clawback is actually standard practice, not evidence of wrongdoing. Early communications pre-December 21st are still part of ongoing collaboration, just not yet formalised. Courts protect genuine work product. You can't strip it away just because PR is involved. So let me see what else it's saying to me, because I just needed to get this one clear in my head, because when it gets into the legal jargon, I've had it basically. So her argument is that because all of this was going on before December 21st, that it means that they were colluding. That is Blake's point of view. She needs to believe in this narrative of all of these people were targeting me and they were working with content creators, implanting narratives and amplifying talking points. And if that was all going on before the premiere, it's not just a legal defence, it's a marketing and reputation campaign. But this is coming like from August 14th, this stuff. So the premiere was earlier than that, wasn't it? And it's like, she's not winning this argument of doing this kind of thing. You don't see immediate results from it, do you? Whereas there was immediate results right from the time that her negative interviews were coming out. It wasn't part of a strategy. There was an immediate gut instinct response from the audience. That's what was happening. And she's still trying to make it that those few days that they had around that time of the premiere was enabled them to do this massive campaign, but it's kind of impossible. So coordinating messaging about a movie or about anything that you're promoting, it's normal. It's normal to be taking advice from here, there and everywhere, especially if you're not sure how that premiere is going to go. You already know that you're going to have to be in the basement at your own movie premiere, that your lead actress does not want to be on the red carpet with you. So, of course, you need to be talking to people. You need to probably be taking legal advice, because if it's got that bad and it's going to be obvious to the public that something is wrong, then questions are going to be asked. So isn't it fair to be fully warned, fully armed, to know what legally you might have to be about to do, to know what PR-wise you might have to be immediately on the case for? It's like they're not allowed to have had any kind of preparation for the situation that she put them in. So I'm having to keep pausing this because my head's in a fuzz. But basically what it's saying is that these people didn't have any common legal interplay, if you like, before they were sued. Basically, so any of those communications from around August where they were just getting advice or having conversation, she says they're not privileged because you didn't have a common legal reason before you were literally sued. So you're not allowed to be just preparing for in the event you might be sued, or in the event that certain public relations strategy might be necessary. So again, I think this is where it's so hard, because it just feels so unfair and so like one rule for you and another rule for me, because their strategy is not being questioned whatsoever. And I think this was without a crystal ball's point when I was with what I was watching last night, was seeing all of this what you're doing is not fair in terms of Wayfarer, but we're not seeing that back from Wayfarer. So her point there was that, is this because it's Justin's faith and he only wants to fight a certain way and he doesn't want to be an aggressor, and that. But I find that, I'm not saying he doesn't still feel that, and there's an element to that of it, but I think having been on that movie and through that experience now, he knows that in this sense that strategy is not going to work with Blake. He's had fair enough evidence of that it's not going to work. So I don't think that it is all about, this is my faith and this is how I want to proceed with this. This is why I wonder if Wayfarer is allowing so much and not fighting so much, and Brian Friedman is staying quiet on that docket and all of that, because there is a bigger... I've always felt like from the beginning that because they knew they were going to be dealing with narcissists, that they would be very careful, and that what you were seeing on the surface wouldn't reflect what was going on underneath, and what might seem like a mistake on the surface or a wrong move or something would have been done for strategic purposes, either to provoke a response or to see which way the land lied or whatever it is. And I feel like that's my hope, my little innocent hope in truth, justice and the American way, even though I'm not American, is that Friedman and co have it under control. It doesn't look good right now, but there's these secret spreadsheets in the back. I always remember, and it's a good tip, my friend Mary Lou told me, that when you're in any kind of argument with somebody, be it a company or whatever, the best thing you can do is open up a Word document, and you, every time you get an email or send an email, you hit forward, copy all the text out of that, slap it into the Word document, delete the draft forwarded email. But if you hit forward, it gives you everything like in text form, and the dates and times and all of that, and who it's from and to and all the rest of it. So you hit forward on any email, copy it all out, stick it in a Word doc, and keep a timeline of every communication. And I feel like that might be what's going on here. Obviously they do stuff like this, but you know what I mean, in terms of, this is where we did this and this is the result. This is where there was no leeway given. This is where leeway was given to Blake's side. I'm hoping that in the background there's something like this going on, where there's a separate case going on entirely. That is my hope. Regarding the Perez thing, has he been for good or better? It remains to be seen, doesn't it? Because has the judge's arguments of the last few days and his orders been made from a point of anger or a point of being pissed off or whatever it is? Maybe, but I still believe it's been valuable. I'm glad he did it. I think we needed it. But yeah, maybe it's been bad, maybe it's not. Who's to say? But it'd be interesting to see now what happens with him. And I still think it's a mistake on their part to elevate his presence in this and to make him be on that docket. And it must have gutted her to have to give him confidential materials, knowing he has that now. I mean, he can never do anything with it, but him just knowing those things will not have gone well with Blake. So yeah, if you don't actually if you're not really interested in spiritual stuff or law of attraction, and you don't like God or thinking, although with law of attraction, or with a course in miracles, what I like about it is that you can shift out the word God for love if you'd rather think love, universe, source, whatever. But it was funny when I was reading these briefs yesterday and trying to make sense of them, that it happened to be this lesson I was on. And what I was trying to bang on to a client today about, a client that has chronic anxiety, but she's still insisting on looking on her Facebook at the world is ending type stuff. And it's like, yeah, but you have to be proactive about this. You can't be doing subconscious mind work and then going off and consciously choosing to open up Facebook and be in groups that are about the sky is falling, a volcano's gonna, you know what I mean? The world will still go on when we're not looking at how the world is ending, you know what I mean? We see what we want to see based on what's going on in our head. Blake Lively wants there to be this untraceable smear campaign because it fits her narrative, it fits her delusion, it fits what she wants to see. And she's looking really, really desperate because it's changing all the time what this is supposedly looking like or where it stemmed from. You'd almost be forgetting at this point that Jed Wallace, you know, was a factor, that she's kept him in with that second amended complaint. He's not really being mentioned at this point because the focus is entirely on Brian Friedman and that, and this case and Koslow girls. You know, Jed Wallace has gone awful quiet, hasn't he, just recently? But yeah, what I was on lesson basically 251, but there's a little section before it, so I'm going to read it and it'll either make sense to you or it won't, and I might chip in on things, but it's basically saying, and it's why I'm careful when I do these videos, because if I'm truly following A Course in Miracles, I should not be judging anybody and thinking in terms of who's right and who's wrong, because A Course in Miracles is all about forgiveness and that we are sinless. And that can be kind of hard to reconcile when you're looking at people like Blake Lively and their actions and how harmful it is. And you're thinking in terms of injustice, which is why I don't try to descend into like real hate and you know, start commenting on her physically and things like that, which would be easy to do. Even in my heart right now, I don't feel hate towards Blake Lively. It's more a sadness that all of this is so unnecessary. And I almost feel sad for her that is what her life is, that yes, she has all this luxury, all this privilege, but if that's what she has to contend with going on in her mind, it's not something I envy her for. And I certainly don't envy her being married to Ryan Reynolds, who doesn't seem to care what happens to her career. He'd rather have her stuck at home with 4 babies, I think. You know what I mean? So anyway, this section of A Course in Miracles, just before lesson 251, is called What is Sin? So tune out now if you don't want to listen. Breathe. Sin is insanity. It is the means by which the mind is driven mad and seeks to let illusions take the place of truth. And being mad, it sees illusions where truth should be and where it really is. Sin gave the body eyes. For what is there the sinless would behold? You see, that's the Course in Miracles argument, is that we are all sinless, and what we see with our eyes, hear with our ears, think with our thoughts is not real. You know what I mean? When it's coming from the ego, it's coming from that place of fear, and all your ego is that internal chatter in your head. It's the sum total of everything that's gone wrong in your life that told you there was things to fear, and it's all those things that have filtered through from your parents and your grandparents and all the generations before that, all those little metaphors that came down, like money doesn't grow on trees, and you had it good when you were having the living daylights battered out of you, and you should be grateful for whatever, and all those little things, you know what I mean? Don't stick your head above the parapet unless you want it chopped off. You know, all those things that block your success and block your feelings of being limitless and all of that. That's all your ego is. It's that little scared thing inside, and we think it's real because it's like a voice in our head, but it's not real. So what need have they of sights or sounds or touch? What would they hear or reach to grasp? What would they sense at all? To sense is not to know. And that sums up Blake Lively to me. To sense that this is going on is not to know that it is. A Course in Miracles really wasn't thinking I'd be applying this to Blake Lively. They probably wouldn't be very happy. And truth can be but filled with knowledge and with nothing else. The body is the instrument the mind made in its striving to deceive itself. Its purpose is to strive. Yet can the goal of striving change? And now the body serves a different aim for striving. What it seeks for now is chosen by the aim the mind has taken as replacement for the goal of self-deception. The right mind, that is. Truth can be its aim as well as lies. The senses then will seek instead for witnesses to what is true, which basically is saying we always find what we are looking for. And I got broken off then. But what I was going to say was that I was saying to a client about this the other day, this business of we see what we want to see. And like for her with chronic anxiety, it's like going on Facebook and looking for all the drama, for everything that tells you the world is ending, the sky is falling, that life isn't safe, that a volcano is going to erupt, that there's going to be an earthquake, there'll be a tsunami, there'll be this, there'll be that, the other. But it's like, well, just don't go there. That's the answer. Whatever you are seeing in your life, in your relationships, in everything, in the landscape, in the friendships you have and everything, if you don't like it, it's on you to change it. Don't put your attention there. Always remember that energy goes where your attention is. Energy will flow to what you're putting your attention on. So it's like remembering all of the time that you are out there in life programming your subconscious mind with stuff. So you get to choose what you are programming your subconscious mind with. And when you're dealing with other people, to always remember that if they're attacking you and all of that, what you're actually dealing with is not what that person is in reality. It's the sum total of everything that's ever scared them or threatened them. That's all the ego is. So if you're having trouble with a person, you're generally having trouble with the sum total of all their pain and fear. You know what I mean? That's what's lashing out at you. And that's what I keep coming back to with Blake Lively. So sin is the home of all illusions, which but stand for things imagined. So that's the same thing, isn't it? This is why it was so funny that it popped up yesterday when I was struggling with these briefs and the unfairness of the judge, and just feeling like this is all an illusion. It's all unnecessary. It's all man-made. It's all not what we were brought here for. And I think that's probably what Justin Baldoni is struggling with. So sin is the home of all illusions, which but stand for things imagined, issuing from thoughts which are untrue. And they are the proof that what has no reality is real. So it's like where you put that judgment on, you're telling yourself because you put a judgment on it that it's suddenly become real. Sin proves that God's Son is evil, and God's Son is talking about all of us. We're all God's Son, all love's Son, if you want to think of it as love or creation. Timelessness must have an end. Eternal life must die, and God himself has lost the Son he loves, with but corruption to complete himself, his will forever overcome by death, love slain by hate, and peace to be no more. As human beings, that is what we believe in. This idea of death, and that the end game of life is to die and be dust in a box and the rest of it. And it's not really what we are. We're these endless spiritual beings just having this human experience, and it should be full of light and joy. And this is what's troublesome about the Lively case. All of this attention on something that shouldn't have even happened, that shouldn't have even been a thing. You know, it is insanity. And I think that's it. It highlights the insanity in our society when we have cases like this that are a lot about absolutely nothing, about egos, fragile egos. And an ego is not real. A madman's dreams are frightening, and sin appears indeed to terrify. And yet what sin perceives is but a childish game. The Son of God may play he has become a body. And that's us, the Son of God. We are basically the Son of God pretending that we are a body and that we're not the Son of God. Prey to evil and to guilt with but a little life that ends in death. But all the while his Father shines on him and loves him with an everlasting love which his pretences cannot change at all. And that's alluding to the idea that whatever you've done in life, it doesn't change what you are underneath, what you truly are. And that's what A Course in Miracles tries to get you away from, this idea that you're broken or permanently tainted and all of this because of your actions or because of what you're guilty of. It's all about taking away the idea of guilt and the idea of needing forgiveness for what you've done and such. So how long, O Son of God, will you maintain the game of sin? Shall we not pull away these sharp-edged children's toys? How soon will you be ready to come home? Perhaps today. There is no sin. Creation is unchanged. Would you still hold return to heaven back? And when it talks about heaven, it's talking about heaven in that heaven is available to us right now. We could have heaven on earth if we so choose to have it with the power of our thoughts, basically. That's why I like my work as a hypnotherapist, because it's all about making you see what's truly available. And I don't bring spirituality into my work unless people have told me they lean that way. I'm quite happy to work in a more logic thinking kind of way if that's what you prefer. But the power of your subconscious mind is a scientific fact. There's no two ways about it. You know, we're getting woo-woo, and science are starting to marry up now. And there's stuff in A Course in Miracles, like you say, you don't have to call it God, you could call it something else entirely, but it really has a lot to say. So how soon will you be ready to come home? Perhaps today? There is no sin. Creation is unchanged. Would you still hold return to heaven back from yourself, basically? How long, O Holy Son of God? How long? So I like A Course in Miracles, because who doesn't want to be reminded how special they are, how they were a thought in the mind of God, and how you're put here for a mission, and it's not to be bloody miserable and getting involved in unnecessarily legal cases that are basically on hurt feelings. That's where it's based on, you know. One of my early videos way back when, before anybody else was saying it, I was very proud of myself that way back when I said Ryan Reynolds has the nerve to say that Justin Baldoni is suing for hurt feelings. All of their side of things is about hurt feelings, whether you want to believe it's that she fancied Justin and she was getting like knocked back because Justin wasn't even picking up on the fact that she fancied him. I don't think really, because all of his focus was on his wife and his family, and she didn't like that. She didn't like this kindness, this saging people, this, you know, she looked at it with suspicion as something to fear or something to be manipulated. If she'd have just been looking at it for what it was, there would have been no problem whatsoever. If she didn't come into it with ulterior motive or sense a weakness and decide to exploit it, if she hadn't mistaken kindness and love and compassion for weakness, we wouldn't have had any of this. So that is my perspective on it, my take, and how I always look at the case. And it's why, if you've only just subscribed, it's why I, as somebody was putting well-being videos on and stuff and talking about subconscious mind, started commentating on this, because I was interested in the feelings behind it and the motivations and what drives people to do this to themselves, to inflict this on themselves, and then to complain about the results of it. So that's the perspective I come from. So hopefully you gained something from that today, and it was interesting and maybe kind of was just a little bit uplifting, and just reminds you that all of this that we're all focusing so much attention on and getting bogged down by and allowing it to get into our chest and tie us all in knots, it's all just nonsense and illusion and entirely unnecessary. Which is why I think it is important that everybody learns from seeing people do this kind of thing to themselves in the name of their egos, basically. So please do hit that like and subscribe and share if you're enjoying this content at all. And thank you for subscribing and supporting. I do appreciate each and every one of you sons of God out there, or sons of love, sons of creation, sons of the universe. Just know you are incredibly special, incredibly important, that you're here for a reason. God or love or source does not create anything without a purpose, even the likes of Blake Lively and Perez Hilton. So please do bear that in mind, and I will see you later.